Good afternoon. I'm Tom Piercy, and I'm with composers from RAM, Gilbert Galindo, Masatora Goya, and Francis White. And we're going to be talking about the music that they have composed for next week's RAM concert, Tokyo to New York. And I'd first like to thank NYSCA, New York State Council on the Arts, and New York City Department of Cultural Affairs for funding this concert project. And I had played these pieces, the Japanese pieces by Joji Yuasa, Yoshio Hachimura, and Takamitsu in Tokyo in 2018. And ever since I played them then, I'd wanted to bring these pieces to New York to be performed on one concert. And then once we got the funding, I decided to ask these three composers to write what I had thought were going to be companion pieces. I was going to assign, like, you would be coupled with Takamitsu, etc. And then I went, well, wait a minute, that might be limiting, or it might be opening up. And I didn't ask you guys if you liked that idea. And I thought, no, I'll just send you the scores and the audio, and of course the instrumentation, and then you do with it, because I was kind of curious what would end up, if there would be a Takamitsu-like piece, or your reaction to it, which could be opposite. So I was thrilled to see the music that came in. And just, what did you can answer, discuss, whatever. What were your first thoughts when I wrote and asked if you're interested in writing for this combination and for this concert?
Well, I was thrilled. I mean, the instrumentation is so beautiful. And in a way, it was a little, you know, because the deadline was quite short, and I have this other big project that I'm working on, but the instrumentation was just too gorgeous, I couldn't say no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great instrumentation. It is flute, and also using piccolo and a lot of alto flute in the Japanese composers' pieces, and clarinet and bass clarinet, harp, lots of percussion. When you see it on stage, there's a lot of stuff, and piano, and in one piece also using electric piano, and it's a great sound combination. So.
I had a similar reaction to Francis. The instrumentation, yeah, is gorgeous, and the possibilities are pretty much limitless, especially with the types of percussion instruments within the Japanese pieces and what's accessible for us, and then the combination of the harp, and then the piano, and then like, okay, well, you know, I'm inclined to the sound of the alto flute, so I just decided to just use alto flute in this one, and also, you know, just a kind of, it calls to mind the Debussy trio as well, so all those were going through my head. I'm like, this is just so much you can do, and again, like the time that I was limited with, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna make it 7 minutes, but then I want to write more of these pieces, really. So for this combination, it'd be incredible. You know, 15-minute piece would be wonderful. But,
yeah, I did have to put time limitations on it so it would fit into one concert, because it was going to be, before Ram got involved, and it was going to be those three pieces and some other pieces that had been written for the original people who played it, which was the Tokyo's sound arc ensemble, and the Japanese composers. And we're not calling you a Japanese composer today. You are a RAM composer.
Right.
So if anyone who knows you thinks that I'm ignoring you. But they were all written, those composers were members of, mostly run by Takamitsu, and it was called the Experimental Workshop Composers Group. And Hachimura, Takamitsu, and Joji were members of that. And they wrote these pieces for the sound arc ensemble. And so I thought it was very interesting that we have RAM composers who have written for the RAM players, although two of them are guest artists. And I'm curious your thoughts of if there's any difference in how you approach a piece or how you write when you know the players that you're writing for.
In this case, actually, I didn't know the Josh, percussionist,
Yes.
and also Tomina, harpist.
Yes.
So I have no clue like how they would play or what kind of player they are. So in this case, I was more like keen on like how to find my sort of reaction like you just described against those like three Japanese masters pieces. Those are really gorgeous, and then so because I've never heard anything written for that specific quintet before, so you sent us the examples and then sound examples, and then like, wow, this is really gorgeous, and then so many percussion, then so nicely utilized, and then so I had to come up with something that's a little different, and then so I thought, like, okay, maybe Gilbert and Francis, might use all these gorgeous, percussion, assortment of percussion, and so like I thought maybe I just should limit, just to use only vibraphone, and what I can do with just one vibraphone, and even without using a bow, because like everybody does that, and so maybe not. I just do it with just one vibraphone with mallet. And so, yeah, right. So, just, and then so something that I wanted to create something that's completely different, but still that utilizes the total combination of the sound, and a little bit different way of utilizing that specific quintet instrumentation.
Differences for you, writing for people you know
Oh, yeah.
and not know?
Yes. I think the more I've written for certain people, I mean, you're included, and I think you're one of the longest musician relationships I've had. So when I know that you're being played in there, I know what gestures you shine at, or at least through my music, And then with the other musicians, yeah, I have worked with Josh, I think, through Ictus Percussion, and some of the others. Is Lish, yes, yeah. So I think she's played my music once, and so, no, I mean it's really great to keep in mind the people that are going to be playing it, even if you don't exactly know they're playing as well. You keep in mind their personality and your relationship and your rapport with them, and you look forward to that. Yeah, and then for people that I have not met, then I just make sure that everything is idiomatic as much as possible, and then reach out to them if I have any questions or other performers that may be on hand, and if those people are unavailable. But yeah, so it's nice to have some kind of collaborative exchange before the first rehearsal, especially with people that you have not worked with before. But yeah.
Francis?
Yeah, for me, it's always this sort of interesting thing of like, you have your own voice, and then there's the performer's voice, and you want to find a way to have those come together in a sort of organic way. In this particular ensemble, I mean, I've worked with you a lot. I've not worked with Lish. I knew Josh, again, through the Ictus project a little bit, and Irfan has played my music.
Right.
But the harpist, of course, I didn't know. So yeah, it's, but one of the things that I really love is when I'm working with players that I can approach, as I did you, hey, does this work?
Right.
Because, particularly, I mean, with the harp, actually, well, that's a different story. But I was able to consult with a harpist about that, because I haven't written that much for harp. And yeah, it's really wonderful. Josh was great about, telling me what worked and what didn't work. And so that's really important to me, to feel like the performers are willing to help you, and I acknowledge that I don't know as much about their instruments as they do, but I want to write something they can play.
Well, it's certainly appreciated from a performer's point of view that you ask, does this work, or how can it work, or is there a better way? because it is rough when you get the score and things don't work. I mean, it's easy, especially, well, I don't care if I know the composer or not, I will go back to them and say, this doesn't work, and I try to show what will work. Like I told you, there was I think sometimes it's, if there was a half step lower or
Right.
half, or why it doesn't work, or if it's an octave lower, but that's not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what will work. Yeah, so that's good. Curious, while you were writing, because I think I sent out the request to write these pieces at the same time, did any of you talk to each other about the project?
Did we?
Not exactly. I think Frances had some harp questions, or I was aware that she had some harp questions. I don't know if you asked me about it, but I know we had, or something. We exchanged emails like, "Oh, this is what Josh said about my questions on the percussion." I'm like, "Oh, that's great to know." And then I don't know if I shared some information with you that I had about the harp. Yeah, kind of like more instrumental,
Yeah.
with idiosyncratic and what works, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, but nothing beyond the technical. I
Right.
think.
We
Yeah.
exchanged something about the deadline and like
Oh.
how it's going. I think that was right.
Yeah, probably I
Something,
did that.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that.
So,
Like asking, have you seen the piece?
Yeah.
Was the person you sent it to nice about it? Yeah. Yeah, I have my initial reactions when someone writes me and says, I'm not going to meet the deadline and I'm not going to look at any of you when I say that. But that's just my gut reaction, and it's usually not a good one. And I go, calm down, and then I calm down. Yeah. So, did you spend much time with the Japanese composers' scores or the audio in preparing to write, or once you started writing?
Not after I started writing, but
Oh.
before that, yeah, I spent maybe, I listened to them like once a day
Oh.
for about 2 weeks, I guess.
I did at the beginning. I listened a lot, and I love all three pieces. They're just wonderful, wonderful pieces. But I felt very strongly that they were also in a very different world than my world.
Yeah.
And one way that I ended up approaching it was I thought, well, I would take some almost arbitrary aspect of each piece as kind of like a jumping off point. So like in the Uwaza, he has the repeated note thing. So okay, repeated, that's pretty neutral material.
Right.
In the Bisbigliando thing in the Hachi, also with the Uwaza, the title of that movement, the pedal shower, that comes from Basho. I love Basho, and his piece was a tribute to Basho,
Right.
so that was another connection there. But yeah, I'm the same. Once I start writing, I kind of can't listen to anything else. Then there comes a point where I have to be, okay, I can't listen to anything else.
yeah, no, I really enjoy watching, looking at the score and listening to the pieces. Yeah, I kind of, again, I think I kind of had the same reaction that Frances did, that that they've seen like pieces that are far removed from what I'm doing now, or probably from what some other composers are doing now, which should be, right, because they're from the late 20th century. And I know what I'm more inclined towards, and I knew it wouldn't be sounding like their works. However, that being said, is that I was more fond of the Takemitsu, and I realized that, I think I've always loved Takemitsu's music, but this made me remind myself of that I have, some sense of kindredness with some of his music. It's almost like, Debussy again is like one of my favorite composers, and so I really hear some of the influence of Debussy in Takemitsu's music, and also the finesse and elegance of Boulez as well. And so I'm attracted to those sort of gestures and textures and sounds. But then again, like when you sit down to write, you're yourself, right? So, but I used alto flute, and I was attracted to one gesture that I used in the middle of my piece, where it gets a little bit more abstract, and I think I took only 2 parts of that gesture, then did my own thing. But I kept on repeating that gesture in the middle because sometimes I feel like some music moves on too fast. And especially with modernism and late modernism in the 20th century, sometimes things just keep on going, and I'm been guilty about that in my music too. So not that that's bad or good, it's just like, for me, I want to try something different. And so that's why I stuck with certain gestures and see how they worked and panned out. So yeah, I think this is a great method of doing this, because we all listened and looked at the scores and, all right, now let's do our own thing.
Nice. Here's the instrumentation. And I was very curious what would come to us from the three of you. And they're very different. And from those three, and each piece is different. But I didn't ask you to write the piece thinking, oh, I know what I will get from you. I knew it would be good, and that's what I would want. But I went, oh, well, I know it will have this sound. And yes, there's some things in there like, oh, okay, that's Francis, that little bit there. And the same with the two of you. And so that was very nice. But the three pieces are very different, which is nice. The three Japanese composers' pieces, to me, and especially after playing them, they have sort of a very similar sound world. And the way they use the time in their pieces, and it's all just sort of sitting there. You have a sound, and then you have this beautiful concept of that the silences are as important as what come before and after. And there is no beat, there is no real tempo, there's no pulse. There's very few places in some of them where there is a specific pulse, but most of it is all of this trading back and forth, and you decide how it moves forward. Whereas the three of your pieces, for the most part, there is a definite pulse. And that is not good or bad, that's just the way it is. So it was nice that these were different from those three. And even though these were written in the early 80s, to me they sound as fresh as if they were written yesterday. And so that was the rehearsals have been going great, and the performers really love them, and love the contrast between the Japanese composers, that sound world, and then your three sound worlds. So we're having a really good time. And even discussing the order of the program, what fits, what will feel good moving, thinking of the program itself as one piece. So as the music is flowing, how does it flow into the next piece? So it's been very good. Tell us something about your piece then.
Well, so I sort of starting from where I left off with my relation to the three Japanese pieces. So I had this idea that I wanted to pay this kind of tribute to them without it being specific. So, and in fact, in the Takemitsu, I too really do love Takemitsu's music. In a lot of ways, this particular piece is, I wouldn't say but it's not entirely typical of Takemitsu. But I also love the Debussy connection, and there are these two particular chords in the piano part that you probably don't even notice that much because there's a lot else going on. And I just fell in love, because I was messing around on the piano with the score, and they sounded like Debussy to me, and so I used them as the jumping off of that movement. So the first movement is very much sort of a tribute to the Takemitsu, and even the title, it evokes the whole idea of rain, and which his is Rain Spell.
Yeah.
Then the second movement, Night, is the one that's sort of tribute to the Hachimura, and his breathing field, I sort of took off on this idea of breathing and breath. And so there are breath sounds, and there's this kind of breath rhythm at the end, and then the pedal shower at the end. And this all mapped into this sort of vision about the different phases of a moonflower, which is a night blooming flower, and the idea of the rain giving birth to the seeds, and then the plant that grows at night and the way plants transpire is very different at night than the way they do during the day, which just seems so magical to me that this is all going on while we don't even know it. And then the petal shower, which, you know, when the flowers bloom, it's so incredibly beautiful, but they're so transient, you know, they last one night and then they fall. And so there's this, you know, this joy and this exuberance and the beauty, and then there's this sort of heartbreak in their fragility. So that's sort of that's kind of the idea.
Gilbert, tell us about your piece.
About my piece, yeah. Well, I thought of, if I remember, that thought a lot about the first gesture, the first couple measures, and how I wanted to color that, and what pitches I wanted to use, and the intervals, and then what can come from that. Wanted to create a mood that was sort of mysterious, that sounded almost ancient, that alludes to some sort of yearning or spirituality. And so when I had the initial idea, then I just let the intuition carry it, then bring it back in and fine tune it, then keep on writing it. And so what developed was a melodic piece. So this opening gesture of a descending fourth turned into a melody that was answered by another instrument. I can't remember my own piece, probably the clarinet, I think. and then it came back again. And then like, okay, now time for the second section. All right, and then so that's how it kind of worked out. So different in the second section. It's pretty different. You have these sort of bell chiming chords that ignite a more abstract section, and I kind of toy with that, and then they kind of get to a certain point where they are always like, okay, we're done, and then boom, we at the 2/3 of the way of the climax section, we have a completely different tonality and different texture, where it's more homophonic. And I was thinking of this section as kind of, I wrote it on Facebook a few times, as like a pop ballad meets impressionism meets me, or something like that. So yeah, so I don't know if you might understand it since you're playing. It's like that's kind of like what I was going. Is like I have some kind of like a pulse with simpler chords, sevenths, ninths probably, which to some people are probably not as simple, but so we just come from there, and then just like let the music react to itself, and then come to a conclusion somehow. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah. Masatora,
Yes.
your piece.
So yeah, when I heard the quintets from the masters, so my first reaction was, wow, I'm just walking into this living forest or something, and just wandering through like all paths, and then listening to that like the leaves, like and then all the animals and the insects, and so I felt like a really organic. And then the next question to me was like how I can utilize piano in this mix, because it was quite different from my perspective, like flute, clarinet, and then which percussion I'm going to use, and I wanted to use vibraphone, and then harp. So in a sense, like harp and piano sounds similar if you play piano percussive, and then so how to contain those, and then without being the Japanese masters. So then I wanted to sort of take on some kind of abstraction, but still into this like harmonic realm a little bit. So I've been experimenting a little bit about like harmonized cluster, and then the combination of like scales. So like if I use like separately, that becomes just the regular scales, but also if you play together, sometimes that's like a bitonal or cluster kind of thing. So and I kind of toyed that ideas, and then I think I spent almost 3 weeks just writing for the first 6 measures, just like a not this, not that, not that, and then just kept deleting. No, I don't like this. And so yeah, like I think it was really hard to just get this like a first 6 measures to me. And then so, and then also, I've been into learning and studying like about like a life and death concepts, or about the universe, or about the deep ocean, and all those subjects. And then so I wanted to write something about this like deep sea kind of experience. There's no light, no sound, no words. So and then so like why? Okay, so then I just it's almost like a joke that that the cluster sometimes sounds like you just throw the dead body into the ocean, kind of, feel, right? So like why don't I start with that kind of sound and make it feel like you are just diving into the ocean? And then while writing it, I felt that deep diving is not just into the sea, but also into the abyss, or into the universe, or deep inside your mind. So, and what you're gonna see in this like lightless, soundless, like a complete darkness in a sense. And then so, but still you have to just keep going down to find something, and then what you can find. So that's kind of the journey I wanted to create. So in that sense, I think that the trailing into this living forest kind of impression that I got from the examples, that I think retaining that journey aspect into my piece.
When I played them in Tokyo, I just thought, oh, I really want to play these in New York. And I want to bring, and especially in one concert, the Takemitsu's played often, the USA not often, and the Hachimura almost never. It's not available for purchase. The score is it's very difficult to read. Because you've seen that score, yes.
Amen.
And so I was thrilled to be able to bring them here and then have you guys join in with it. So I wanted to thank the three of you for coming, talking about the project and concert, and about your music, and RAM composers writing for RAM players, matching the Tokyo's experimental workshop composers from the early 80s writing for the Sound Arc Ensemble. So come to the concert Sunday, December 11th at Martha Graham Studio. You can look all the information up on the website. And again, thank you, New York City Cultural Affairs and NISCA, for making this project possible. Thank you.